something that has always been in our DNA when we look at ourselves, that we marry the idea of profit pursuit with a higher purpose. It may well be that in recent times that might have been accentuated, but I cannot recall a time when we had only existed for profits. And I just want to share some few examples. In roundabout in the middle of the 80s, when the country was faced with a very difficult political crisis, and it was our forebears in Anglo American, the likes of Clem Santa, who came up with the idea of the low road, high road scenarios. The idea behind that was to start challenge everyone in society to think about a different future. Basically lifting the gaze beyond the current challenges that were facing the country at the time. To say the current environment, whatever that was prevalent at the time, was not sustainable. So one would argue that what does that have to do with the day-to-day running of the business? But we've always accepted the fact that we cannot exist as a business in an environment if society around us is failing. So it is that recognition that drove us to actually crisscross the country, having developed those scenarios, which painted out different trajectories for the country, both the positive scenarios as well as the negative scenarios. And I can say that it's on the back of that work that Anglo American started, which then led to the delegation of business to go and meet with the ANC in exile. And it was the birth of the political negotiations that brought about the kind of South Africa that we have today. I'm using this as one of the examples that says, for us at Anglo American, I cannot recall a time when we've only thought about profit as a primary driver for our existence. The second one was the establishment of Anglo Zimele, which was an enterprise development company providing funding and financial assistance to the SMMEs. That was in 1989, 30 years ago, before even BE was legislated. It was not even in vogue in those days. But we recognized and saw the need of inclusivity, the importance of existing for a higher purpose as a business. And we did that because it was our values that drove us. It was the kind of leadership that was far-sighted, that recognized that we cannot have the majority of the South African population not participating in the mainstream of business. So one could argue about scale, degree, and say, was that adequate? But the point here is that there was clarity of thought in our own minds about the importance of the role that business can play, and that continues to play. The third example I want to share with you is that in the year 2000, we recognized as a business that HIV and AIDS was prevalent in the country. And the government at the time did not provide ARV treatment to the whole of the South African citizens. We bucked the trend as Anglo American, having done some research. We did this, number one, to protect and extend, preserve the longevity of the lives of our own employees. And we provided the ARV treatment to our employees and their families free of charge. And again, it was years later that government decided to join and provide and roll out those kinds of treatments. So where I'm going with this is that for us, it has always been about values. It has always been about doing the right thing. It has never been about compliance. Lastly, in recent times, we've decided to take this a notch higher. We've launched last year what we call is our Sustainable Mining Plan. This plan is predicated on 3 pillars. The first pillar is that of being a trusted corporate leader. By that, I'm talking about providing thought leadership. I'm talking about putting ourselves there in terms of being a values-based organization, being solution-seeking, trying to make sure that we collaborate with all the stakeholders, we create a common sense of identity and where everybody belongs. And we believe that our record speaks for ourselves in terms of what we've been able to do in that regard. The second pillar is that of building thriving communities. In other words, starting to think about the day when the resources that we mine are depleted. How will our communities live? Start thinking about the alternatives, creating alternative economies, either through agriculture, through tourism, and agro-processing, to name but a few. And there are practical programs that we have introduced, and some are in the making, across our provinces where we operate.